country minister, then to an uncle. Now, as a boy, little Rousseau is apprenticed first to a notary public, then to an engraver who treats the child brutally, so much so that little Rousseau runs away. His early life is filled with violent emotions and rootless wandering from one job to another and from one country to another. Young Rousseau experiences the harsher realities of life, working a range of jobs from laborer to tutor and even as a lackey for an obese nobleman. Now, at the age of 15, Rousseau is taken into the home of a Catholic Swiss baroness, Madame de Walens. The baroness hopes to convert him to Catholicism, and, well, she plans to seduce and deflower him. The raven-haired, pale-skinned, red-lipped noblewoman wishes to complete Rousseau's education in more ways than one, and does exactly that. Rousseau, who is gifted with the sexual appetite of a goat, will enjoy the ladies for the rest of his life, so much so that he fathers 5 illegitimate children by a beautiful but ignorant servant girl. Soon after his arrival in Paris, which is around 1740, 1741, he meets Diderot, another great mind of the Enlightenment. Diderot is the one who comes up with the concept of the noble savage. Contrary to popular opinion, it's not Rousseau who comes up with this concept, but Diderot. After Diderot reads an explorer's travel log to the South Pacific, and he raves about the naturalness and uncorrupted simplicity of the Tahitians, and this noble savage concept will be a major influence on the writings of Rousseau. The two men meet at a cafe where both of them have gone to watch a chess match. They're watching chess players. They are both of similar age and background, not to mention ambitions. Rousseau and Diderot, who had very different temperaments, would remain close friends for, over 15 years. Rousseau is accepted into polite intellectual circles of Paris as one of their own kind. He then composes a challenge to the basic tenet of the Enlightenment and argues in his essay, Discourse on the Arts and Sciences. He argues that apparent cultural and social progress has led humanity only to moral degradation, degeneration. Art and science, to Rousseau, is formed out of our idleness and is fed by luxury and corruption. His next work, Discourse on the Origins of Inequality, paints a portrait of human history as a type of manifestation of corruption and decadence. He condemns private property and considers it the root of all evil and inequality. Needless to say, this influences Karl Marx quite a bit decades later. To Rousseau, private property engenders nothing but pain and envy. Human history, to Rousseau, showcases that progress has increased the corruption of humanity, and the culture is needed. Culture's needed as a type of weapon against that corruption. Rousseau turns himself into a bitter enemy of sophistication in all its forms. His animosity towards the rich even extends towards many of his friends and fellow intellectuals. By the mid-1750s, Rousseau grows more and more out of sympathy with the Paris intellectuals. He has grown sick of the salons, sick of the taverns and coffee houses, and tired of all the pamphlets, the card games, and clavichord musical recitals. He feels deep in his soul that intellectuals just want to write books, any book, as long as it sells and is successful. Rousseau becomes a type of dazzling one-man alternative to the Enlightenment, and his ideas end up reaching a wide audience because he presents his views as a best-selling novel, La Nouvelle Heloise, which is written around 1761. Then again, he writes another scathing review here in an educational treatise that also reads like a novel, Emily, written 1762. The reading public gobbles up both works and are very eager for more. So Rousseau settles down to give an account of himself in a series of letters that are published as his confessions. These letters are published between 1781 and 1788. In Rousseau's confessions, he sets up his own conscience as the only touchstone on issues of morality, and defines and defends a new code of spiritual virtue, a new code that burns with a vigorous religious fire. Rousseau then suffers persecution from many of the other Paris intellectuals, so much so that rocks are thrown at his house, and he must take refuge outside of Paris. He vamooses to the island of Saint Pierre. He is soon expelled by the authorities and then decides to seek asylum in London. Now, Rousseau is married, but his wife, Thérèse, does not join him in London until much later. Thérèse is far too busy having a steamy love affair with the notorious libertine James Boswell. Boswell, after a while, gets rather tired of Thérèse, who's very possessive, and claims in his own journal that it was Thérèse who seduced him. Now, the London intellectuals are far more open to Rousseau's views than the Paris intellectuals. So he presents a narrative of human history in which economics and morals are intertwined. To Rousseau, human society is a collective being that has undergone a passage, a type of passage from savage simplicity to the modern world, which is obsessed by wealth. It's an unholy shift to Rousseau from spiritual sophistication, the noble savage, to a world filled with private property and inequality. To Rousseau, civilization is not a good thing, and our lives must be filled not with reason, but with feeling and natural instincts. Rousseau feels that people are born good, but corrupted by society. When we are taught to curb or frustrate our natural instincts, to depress our true feelings and starve our inner souls, which, according to Rousseau, leads only to alienation from ourselves and alienation from God. To Rousseau, God is beyond all the formulations of the mind and of reason, our emotions of awe and reverence for God, to Rousseau, should be allowed to thrive and to become dominant. Religion, to Rousseau, is a matter of the heart and of the soul, and not of the mind. Now, the streets of London are very crowded, noisy, and smelly. So Rousseau seeks out wild spots in the middle of the lonely forest, vast, solitary spaces, places in which he can lose his spirit and let his soul run free. Deep inside the lonely forest, the solitude of the forest, Rousseau feels himself lost in the voluptuousness of the universe, a sweet and profounding opening of his senses, which to Rousseau is a type of delicious spiritual intoxication that brings him ever closer to God and to the divine. All right, with that thought, we're going to end part 2 of spirituality.